So while I don't like the label, I gotta admit that the title of this movie is pretty indicative of what it's like to live with ADHD. When I'm done with this, I need to do that other thing, and before I do that, remember the end. Yep, day in the life of my head. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is brought to us by directors The Daniels and stars Michelle Yeoh, Ki-Hugh Kwan, and Jamie Lee Curtis. An aging Chinese immigrant is swept up in the insane adventure where she alone can save the world by exploring other universes, connecting with the lives she could have led. So Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is the new flick by The Daniels, and I kinda like these guys. I really enjoyed their previous film together, Swiss Army Man, and also Daniel Scheinert, one of the Daniels, made the movie The Death of Dick Long, which I reviewed on this channel a couple years ago. I really enjoyed that one too. Their movies tend to have this really kinetic energy about them and be a bit quirky and just a tad bit off-center. And that kind of storytelling really speaks to me. Now I get that that's not going to be for everybody because their movies are pretty fucking out there and this one's no different. Judging by the trailers of this movie, you would be forgiven if you thought that this was going to be an action extravaganza. And while it does have a healthy dose of action, that is not what this movie is. In fact, I find it a bit difficult to put this movie in a specific box, to give it a label. At times, it's a really funny comedy. At other times, it's a badass action movie. And then at other times, it's a deep family drama. Not to mention its trippy as hell sci-fi elements too, but somehow they mash all this together and make it work. I'd heard a lot of good things about this movie leading up to it, and unfortunately I wasn't able to see it when it first came out. I had to wait a little while for it to come to a theater near me. It's an A24 movie, which you already know when you're going into an A24 movie, you're probably gonna get something at least a little bit strange. Now the last time I went into an A24 movie that I was like really hyped for, that everybody universally was just praising left and right, it was The Green Knight, and that turned out really bad for me because I fucking hated that movie. If you liked it, good for you. I'm happy that you did, but I could not stand that goddamn movie, and you know what? I'm tired of apologizing for it. If you want to know those passionate thoughts, then check out my review right here. Anyway, going into this movie, I couldn't help but think, man, I've been here before, hope it doesn't turn out that way, and thankfully, it didn't. This movie was really fucking cool. Now, I don't want to get into the story too much for fear of spoiling things, but just know it's about an immigrant family headed up by Michelle Yeoh, who run a laundromat and they're being audited by the IRS, and then for reasons they have to start jumping through parallel universes to save not just the world but her family as well. She's able to call on the talents of her other selves in other universes and pull them into this one, and that helps her combat this almighty evil that is coming into her world. Now I know that sounds like a big sci-fi action flick, and there are elements of that here, but at its heart this movie is legit, no shit, a family drama. It's about this family that seems on the outside like everything's okay, but on the inside, everything's all kinds of fucked up. They're dysfunctional as hell and just falling apart at the seams. And realizing through the course of the events in this movie that, you know, maybe what I always thought was important in the world isn't so important. Maybe what's really important to me has been right in front of me all along. Now, whether our characters actually realize that and capitalize on it, well, this is an A24 movie by the Daniels, so who knows how it's gonna end. But it's gonna be a hell of a ride, that's for sure. Now, I said the movie was a comedy, and that is very true. And if you know anything about the Daniels and their previous work, that won't be a surprise to you. They tend to do a really good job of injecting comedy into their projects. And this one, there were some genuinely funny as hell moments in this movie. Like, I audibly laughed out loud multiple times in this movie, and I wasn't expecting that. There's also some shit in this movie that is so far out there that you can't help but laugh at it. I mean, there's some really creative, just off the wall shit in this movie, especially concerning a raccoon. I gotta throw that out there. That's not a spoiler, it's not giving anything away, but you'll know what I'm talking about when it happens. But the stuff with the raccoon, that was fucking great, man. But it's not just a really funny comedy, it is also that action movie that the trailer leads you to believe it is. While the action isn't the main focus of the film, there is plenty of it here. Now, some of it is played for some laughs here and there, but make no mistake, the action here is very impressive and really exciting. Why characters are fighting at times is really kind of off-kilter and goofy, but the actual fights themselves, the action scenes, are really badass. For anyone who doesn't know or forgot, Michelle Yeoh Yeoh reminds you in this movie that she is a badass martial artist. And Ke-Huy Quan as well, aka Short Round from the Temple of Doom, is a badass martial artist too. I didn't know that. The action is shot in such an energetic, visceral way. It's just awesome, man. I mean, even when the things that they're fighting about and what's going on in the scene is kind of funny, kind of goofy, there's still really exciting, badass fight scenes. And there's actually quite a bit of them in the film. I gotta say that much for the trailer. Well, it does lead you to believe that this is a straight up action adventure movie, and it's not. The amount of action that's in the trailer is indicative of the amount of action in this movie. There is a ton of it. But the fact that I'm sitting here saying that this isn't an action movie, it is more of a character drama, should go a long way in telling you that that's how good the drama is in this movie. Yes, it's a comedy. Yes, it's an action film. Yes, it's a sci-fi. They go through universes and all that stuff. But at the heart of this story at all times is the family drama, and that is the part of the movie that trumps everything else. While all those other aspects are absolutely excellent, the drama and the story here about this family and them trying to repair and get back in touch with each other is what will stick with you after the credits roll. There are some heartfelt, heartbreaking moments in this film that you just don't expect. And by the time you get to the end, the message that this quirky, goofy little movie has for the world is kind of fucking beautiful. Now, all that being said, around the end of the second third of the film, before we get into the final, things kind of slow down just a bit. They don't really slow down. This movie never really slows down. There's always just a whole lot of shit going on in this movie. I mean, it's very erratic. However, there is a part in the story where it feels like the story itself kind of slows down. It just stops and doesn't move forward for just a few minutes. I was still entertained, but admittedly, I felt like we really weren't going anywhere at this point. Now, it very quickly ramps back up, but there is probably this section, maybe 5 minutes. Maybe they called it a breathing period. I don't know, but there was that section there that did stand out to me to be just a bit slower than the rest of the movie. Narratively, because this movie doesn't really ever slow down. But that little trip up right there did not derail this movie by any means. It was a very original, great little story that was executed beautifully. It was funny when it needed to be, it was badass when it needed to be, and it really hit you in the feels when you weren't expecting it like it needed to. Now, seeing as how this movie does deal with multiverse things and people jumping from one universe to another and they're just kind of all over the place, things could get very confusing very quickly. But they did a really good job with the story by taking something that very easily could have been very confusing, and at times it can be, and making it extremely digestible to the audience. All this really high concept stuff in the movie, they're able to boil it down so that it doesn't get in the way and make it very understandable. You're never really confused as to how this thing works. I mean, there are some things that you don't get, but you're not supposed to get them. They're never really come up, they don't explain. You get the basic premise of what's going on, and as the movie moves forward, you understand how it operates. Looking back as to how complex this movie is, that's kind of a feat that they made it never really difficult to watch. While I can absolutely admit that it is really out there, I was never confused. I totally got what was happening the whole time and how it was happening. And that really says something about the expert craftsmanship in the story department with this film. Now, performance-wise, I just gotta say, wow. Michelle Yeoh, I've always thought she was a good performer, but she's always been a very physical performer. In this movie, while yes, she does do the physical side of things too, it's her actual performance that is so amazing. She does a wonderful job, and she is a great character to follow. She is a very flawed character, and that's one of the things that made her the most interesting, and she played all of that fantastically. But the one that surprised me the most here would be Ke-Huy Quan. I haven't seen this guy since he was yelling Dr. Jones in the Temple of Doom, but holy shit, I don't know where this guy's been, but he's apparently been studying his martial arts as well as his acting abilities, because he fucking crushed it here. He is the fucking heart of this movie. He takes a character that at first seems like he could be kind of annoying and grating and really develops it into something amazing. And the performance he gives in this role is one of the best in the movie, bar none. He was fantastic, and some of the most heartfelt moments in the movie revolve around him and his character, and he absolutely sells it with his performance. Everybody else does a great job too. There are no slackers here. Just overall, this movie had fantastic performances, which is kind of what we've come to expect from these two directors. They do a great job of getting wonderful performances out of their actors and everything that they do. Now, aesthetically, this movie is absolutely gorgeous to look at. There is a fair amount of CGI here or there, but you can't always tell what is and isn't. It's rare that the CGI in this movie is like a real big thing or the centerpiece of a scene. Well, there is one thing, but it makes sense why that is. It's typically complementing something in the scene, and that is, in my opinion at least, how CGI should be used, and definitely how it's used best. But while the effects, CGI, practical, or otherwise, all do look great, the real showstopper here is just the way way that this movie is shot. This movie is gorgeously shot, and the director of photography here deserves an Oscar nomination. Larkin Seipel, or I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but he did a fantastic job here. This movie is absolutely gorgeous, and even if you don't like the movie itself, you gotta give it its props in the way that it looks. Guys, Everything Everywhere All at Once was a hell of a movie. While it's definitely gonna scratch that action and comedy itch, at the end of the day, this is a straight up family drama. A weird ass family drama, but a weird ass family drama that they made extremely easy to understand. While it does have a point closer to the end that things do slow down just a bit, all the other good things in this movie, the fantastic performances, the absolutely gorgeous cinematography, the excellent story, and just the overall energetic feel of this movie from beginning to end trump that in spades. This is one of those few movies out there that is hyped all to hell, and when it finally does come out, it ends up being as good as the hype said. This is an excellent flick that I suggest you all go pick up when it's available, because it is absolutely worth a buy.
Do it! Do it!
Show me the money!
Do it!
You motherfucker!
So,
Show me the money!
do it!
If you like really out there, exciting, really interesting movies that are trying to do something different and do it successful, then check out Everything Everywhere All at Once one day, and I think you're gonna have a really good time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with that, like these guys, and possibly check out my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Dragon Khan and Marge G. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Alpha Universe.
Of all the places I could be, I just wanted to share with you.
So if you hadn't guessed yet, I really enjoyed this movie, and I really enjoyed Ke-Huy Kwan's performance in the film. But I gotta say, something that was a bit off-putting to me was his voice. I'm telling you, man, that's how I knew who it was, because I don't think this guy, at least audibly, like with his voice, matured beyond whatever age he was in the Temple of Doom, because he sounds, at his age now, which is probably in his 40s, I assume, maybe even 50s, exactly the fucking same as he did in the Temple of Doom. I don't mean he sounds like the same, but like with a little bit deeper voice. No, he sounds exactly the fucking same. He looks a little bit different. You can look at him and tell that it's the same guy. He does look like he grew, but his voice just never fucking grew. He's got the same voice he had back then. While I'm sure he gets it all the time and just probably fucking hates it, if I ever meet this guy in real life, I will pay him money if he will let me film he and I with him next to me just going, Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones, just in his regular voice, because it would sound exactly like it did back in the Temple of Doom. I bet he does get that shit like all the time, and I bet he fucking hates it. So if you're one of the people out there that's gone up to this guy sometime somewhere out in the world and said that to him, just know, you fucking ruined his day. I'd totally be one of those people though.